The following program was recorded at WERC's annual conference in Orlando, Florida. I'm pleased to welcome Supply Chain Brain Editor Emeritus, Jean Murphy.
Hello. Today I'm speaking with Rich Thompson, Head of Supply Chain and Logistics Solutions at Jones Lang LaSalle. Welcome, Rich.
Well, thanks, Jean.
I understand that a team of experts from your company recently returned from the Panama Canal. Tell me what you saw there with the expansion and how you think that's going to impact companies.
Yeah, well, thanks. It was really quite an exciting trip, and you can read a lot about the Panama Canal and you can study it on the web, but there's something about being down there that really is quite exciting. What a lot of people don't realize is that the Panama Canal is one of the 7 modern wonders of the world. And you can see why once you start to explore the history of the canal and see what they're doing down there. The good news is that the planned expansion is on time and on budget. In fact, it's ahead of schedule right now, and as you know, it's planned to complete in 2014. So interestingly, that marks the 100th year anniversary of when it officially opened in 1914. But in essence, the way I think about it is that it will allow for ships to carry, more than twice as many containers as they do now, given the width of the canal. It's so tight that when you see a ship coming through, a container ship, it literally has about 12 inches of margin on either side. I mean, you can reach out literally and touch these container vessels as they're coming through. It's that tight. And the container ships that were designed to pass through the canal are really not that efficient. So the widening and the deepening of the canal and the new locks that they'll be putting in will really effectively allow for, as you know, ships with twice the capacity. So it will really drive improved economies of scale and lower costs from an ocean freight perspective.
So are companies looking at changing the lanes that they use, changing their ports of call, that kind of thing as a result of when the Panama Canal expansion opens? Yes,
and we're seeing a lot of interest, not only from our clients, which would be the corporate user types, the biggest importers would be the retailers like the Walmarts and Home Depots and those types of companies who we work with, and certainly they are anticipating that they will continue with their port diversification strategies. As I think everybody knows, 2/3 the population of the U.S. is on the East Coast, and so instead of what has been more traditionally the fact, which is bringing goods into L.A. Long Beach on the West Coast and then trucking them or railing them all the way across the country to where the demand centers are, this will allow a much more efficient way to reach the population base. And so there's a tremendous speculation about which ports are going to be the winners and which are going to be the losers. But those ports on the East Coast, Charleston, Savannah, et cetera, are all working hard to position themselves. Miami is actually the closest U.S. port on the East Coast to the Panama Canal. A lot of people don't realize that, but they're working hard to position themselves, meaning dredging and trying to provide for the new what they call post-Panamax vessels. There's only one port right now on the East Coast, actually, of the United States that's capable of handling these post-Panamax vessels with the depth that is required, and that's Norfolk. That's the only port right now that's fully capable of doing that. But everybody's working hard to be prepared by 2014.
And obviously, if you have a shorter route, you're going to be saving on fuel, and that's certainly something that's on everybody's mind these days. Tell me what you're hearing from your customers about the whole fuel issue.
Well, fuel costs are a huge issue right now, and we're certainly hearing that here at the conference, at the WERC conference. There's a tremendous concern about oil prices and how that drives freight rates up. And so as you think about modal choices, ocean freight is a very cost-effective way of moving goods. And so, the added economies of the post-Panamax vessels, which will be accommodated by the canal, certainly is attractive to a lot of, corporate clients that are looking at trying to drive their costs down and become more efficient and more effective. So, clearly, I think that will be a game changer, and we'll see, more products coming through and around to the East Coast and Gulf Coast ports than we have in the past.
Are you seeing any companies, I know you're involved in commercial real estate and in helping companies determine where to locate their facilities. Is the cost of fuel driving any changes in that and in where companies think they should locate?
Gene, that's a great question, and I think it is having an impact, a significant impact, in fact. We just authored a white paper, which we call Made in America, which is really kind of a look at how companies make decisions on global sourcing and manufacturing. And as you know, China has been the #1 country from an outsourcing perspective over the last several years. And for a good variety of reasons, the largest being the delta in labor costs is so significant that it made sense to do that. But as China's labor costs have gone up and as the cost of transportation has gone up, the gap has closed significantly. And so companies, and as you know, supply chain executives are very smart, and it's all a big math problem, really, in great effect. And so as that gap starts to close, and other issues like the supply chain disruptions we've seen in Japan with the tsunami and other things, it really starts to weigh in on those decisions about whether it makes sense to manufacture in Asia, or would it make sense to bring that back closer to home. And so to answer your question, we see more companies now evaluating that, and we have seen some examples like Caterpillar and GE where they've brought back manufacturing to the U.S. For those reasons. And it's a variety of things. Fuel and transportation costs are certainly among those decision factors.
There seem to be a good many people out there who think that the U.S. has lost its edge when it comes to manufacturing. Do you think that we still have the capability to provide manufacturing in this country if some companies wanted to bring it back?
Yeah, it's a perception, you're right, amongst many, that the U.S. has sort of lost its edge as it relates to manufacturing, because a lot of what you read is that things and jobs have been outsourced to Asia. And the fact of the matter is that's true. Jobs have decreased steadily over the last 40 years. And in fact, the percentage of manufacturing jobs in the U.S. in 1970, I think, was around 25%, and it's steadily declined to around 7-8% today. So, when you think about it that way, it's clear that people's perceptions can be that we've lost our edge. The fact of the matter is, though, that we haven't lost our edge. In fact, I would suggest we've sharpened it, because the U.S. has seen steady increases in productivity over that same time frame. So if you're going to measure it by number of jobs, then we have not been doing a great job. But if you measure it by productivity and output, the U.S. is still the #1 manufacturing powerhouse in the world. We manufacture 21% of all goods made globally. It's just the focus has changed. We're not making apparel products. We're not making toys. So, when you're at the Walmart and when the average American is out shopping, a lot of the labels are made in China. But when it comes to aircraft and electronics and things like that, we are still one of the world's leaders in those areas, and we still are, and I think will continue to remain the #1 manufacturing powerhouse.
Yeah, it's good to remember that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are there any trends in the real estate part of the business as it relates to the supply chain that you can talk to us about?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because a lot of people say, gosh, what is a real estate firm doing in supply chain? I mean, and there's sort of a gap in their minds when they think about that. But, it's our point of view that you can't be a trusted business advisor to your clients on industrial real estate, plants, warehouses, and distribution centers, if you don't understand supply chain. When you think about it, supply chain and the logistics costs, freight costs and inventory and labor represent 80% of total operating costs. In real estate, it's quite a small percentage. And so it is critically important to get that pinned to the ground, whether it's a manufacturing facility or a warehouse or a distribution center. But it's really the supply chain costs that are the key considerations. So that's why we are involved and are very interested in supply chain. But to your question, as freight costs go up, as companies are looking to become more sustainable in terms of what they do, it has a dramatic impact on the footprint, on the supply chain network, does it not? So we talked about manufacturing and how companies are evaluating whether or not it makes sense to maybe move some of that back to the U.S. or closer to. It's the same thing on the distribution side. Companies are trying to mitigate the risk of increased fuel costs by getting closer to their customer. They're trying to seek ways to become more efficient and effective, which is what supply chain management's all about. But as it relates to real estate, that has a dramatic impact on the footprint or the network in terms of how you service that. So that's what we're seeing, is that companies are really looking hard at their networks right now in an effort to mitigate all these things that are coming down the pike we've just talked about.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Gene. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I've been speaking with Rich Thompson of Jones Lang LaSalle. Thank you for watching.